as you go up the work pyramid to more elite jobs, this is where things get a little bit different, a little tricky. What is AI going to do? If you need 10 accountants in a big company before, do you just need 2 now because of AI? If you needed so many legal secretaries,
more lawyers,
right? Do you just need a few? Like, so this really changes a lot of jobs that people were told were bulletproof are not so much bulletproof anymore. Love it or hate it, AI is coming into our lives at a rapid pace, from data centers to AI in our daily lives, from Shanghai to Regina, from Louisiana to Grand Prairie, Alberta. AI is changing the landscape, not just here in Canada, but around the world. But how will it change the landscape? To talk more about it, thrilled to be joined as always by Paul Macucci. Paul, how are you?
Hey, Jim, how are you today? Interesting topic, getting a lot of interesting reviews across the United States, as we talked about before the show. Ronnie Chieng from The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Was at
He's
Harvard.
a brilliant comedian actor. Brilliant.
Yeah. He was doing the graduation speech. And, for those of you watching convocations across the United States over the last 3 weeks, which, as we know, their schools let out earlier than ours, they've had these people standing up saying, AI is the future. And the students have been panning them. They've been booing them. They've been throwing things at them. So Ronnie gets up and he says, F AI. And all of Harvard, the students stand up and start to cheer that this gentleman is panning it. So, there's an interesting dynamic going on between young people who are starting their careers, their thoughts on AI and the future of AI. Because, you and I, Jimmy, and not that I'm hoping we see it, but quite frankly, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some impacts of AI in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And, we talked about some impacts from medical on a small scale. And I think we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But we have these software developers going on podcasts talking about the world changing and robots taking our jobs. Yeah.
Let's play the clip so people know. Let's go to the clip right now, and then you'll understand why Paul is leading off with this. So this is our man from The Daily Show, Ronnie, doing his thing with our friends at Harvard.
Well, on the topic of A's, by the way, can I just say, fuck AI. Fuck AI. Fuck AI. It's stupid. It's so stupid. Have you tried using it? It's always wrong. Like, I asked AI what's the fastest way to get from New York City to Harvard, and it told me to take Flixbus. Look, a lot of other respected graduation speakers in colleges around America are talking about you guys needing to master AI for the future, okay? I'm here to tell you the mission of your generation is to destroy AI. Kill it. To accomplish this, you'll have to capture and reprogram an AI to be on the side of humanity, then commandeer its own time-traveling technology, send it back to the past to defeat the current AI before it gains sentience. This isn't just graduation day. This is Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Now, if you are a young man or woman whose family just spent $400,000 or $500,000 on a elite college education for the last 12 months listening to podcasts with people saying, by the way, your job's gone, I can understand that visceral reaction to FAI.
Oh yeah, of course. And imagine if your field was technology. So, all these kids, I know my kids, quite frankly, as they were, trying to figure out, studying hard, trying to figure out what to do in school, it basically was go into IT because there's going to be great jobs in the future in IT. What? And then all of a sudden, AI just took your job away.
And now what?
Now what? So quite frankly, a robot named Biff, who actually can sit at a computer, cook me dinner. We don't need you to actually do programming anymore. We don't need programmers anymore. We don't need graphic designers. All those jobs that we told these kids to get into so they didn't have to go into the factories, they've been now told are gone, and they're going to be replaced because they're the most sedentary routine. And now that we're telling them to go back, go into the factories to do jobs that the robots can't, and go learn a trade. So you didn't really need to expend the $400,000 to be in one of these schools in the US, you could have, quite frankly, just gone and got a trade, not had to study so hard. You could have drank beer, smoked weed, quite frankly, saved $400,000, and you'd be basically driving a pickup truck, and you're in a better off than you are now graduating from Harvard.
You know, here's the thing about this whole topic, why we thought it was so important to bring up and talk about today, Paul.
Yeah.
There's so much unknown. I mean, there's so many conflicting theories and ideas of what AI is going to do and how it's going to change the workforce in North America, in the world, that really no one truly knows. Like the only thing we do know, there's a base foundation of the workforce in North America, and you just touched upon it. Trades. Robots can't do your plumbing when you have to fix your toilet and lay copper piping or PVC piping, or do the electrical or build a house. That's still, that trade work still has to be done. Now, as you go up the work pyramid to more elite jobs, this is where things get a little bit different, a little tricky. What is AI going to do? If you need 10 accountants in a big company before, do you just need 2 now because of AI? If you needed so many legal secretaries,
more lawyers,
right? Do you just need a few? Like, so this really changes a lot of jobs that people were told were bulletproof are not so much bulletproof anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So now for a minute, let's talk about Canada for a minute. It's interesting because we've been hearing Kevin O'Leary and a bunch of people. They're here, Jim. And before the show, Jim was taking me through some of the West Coast projects that they're talking about doing, which I find really interesting. And we had the debate before about, are these specific data centers that they're talking about building for specific projects? Because I think we got to kind of look at AI on 2 different levels. So, and I look at, the stuff that Elon Musk talking about is revolutionizing the world, creating 3,000 robots a year, or whatever the crazy, 300,000.
Yeah.
And then there's creating a data center for medical purposes and creating a data center for specific purposes. Because I think we really got to look at that and say, okay, what is feasible and what is something we can do right now to be beneficial?
Yeah.
The other stuff, quite frankly, it does. You remember the .com?
Well, yes.
Yeah, remember the .com era?
Oof.
I think it is a lot of .coms, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when you listen to the chatter about it and the software developers that are coming and talking about how it's going to change the world in the next 36 to 5 years, 36 months to 60 months, I look at it and think, okay, whatever. But, there are benefits we can get now, which I think are fantastic through AI. And then the other things they're talking about of changing our culture and our economy, I think we have to realistically stop and then talk a little bit about the feasibility. So let's talk about the Canadian projects for a minute.
There are some big ones that ink has been signed, and Premier Mo of Saskatchewan, along with the executives from Bell Canada, they're building a huge 300 megawatt facility on an empty patch of industrial land south of Regina.
Yep.
So they're building that. TELUS is building one in Kamloops and one in Rimouski, Quebec. Now, there's a company called Digital Realty, which is turning the old Toronto Star printing press off the 407 in Vaughan to a 700,000 square foot AI-ready facility. So these things are being built, and Mr. Personality himself, Kevin O'Leary, is proposing a $70 billion 7-gigawatt AI data center campus in Grand Prairie, Alberta. And they're being built. I know Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook is building a massive AI data center in Northeast Louisiana, but a lot of these companies are looking at either the communities with a lot of empty industrial land that's being unused, or buildings that once housed a lot of stuff that isn't being used, and they're stepping in and filling the void.
Yeah, well, the grid, right? So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
So the Alberta projects, before the show, I took a look at Alberta and I said, okay, what capacity could Alberta really take now? So that's the issue, right? So, and really, they could absorb a cap of 1.2 gigawatts.
Right.
So that really is a small amount of gigawatts which the grid can absorb. Now they're talking about building. The interesting thing is they're all talking about building their own hydroelectric generation plants and everything else. unfortunately, if you really look into it and you do the research, to build a plant, you need turbines, you need blades, you need production of those items through cast systems to actually build them.
It's quite specialized.
They're not available. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, there's 3 companies that primarily do them. They're not available. No one's doing it. And they're actually sold out to 2030. So anyone getting into this business today really doesn't start getting into the business until 2035.
But you have to build the structure. And so, I mean, that's why I think this is real quick, Paul. This is why a lot of these deals by Bell, by TELUS, by all these other hedge funds and other startup companies are being signed now, because they realize to get the land, the environmental study, build the structure, get the infrastructure in place. It takes time to get everything in place. This is not something that can be done by next spring.
But you know, it sounds like these are big data centers, but compared to what's going on around the world, these are
China.
These are actually minute data centers.
Yes, they are.
So they sound huge when you say $70 billion. But when you look at the projects that we're proposing, especially on the West Coast right now, they'll be very specific. So there'll be data centers for medical. There'll be data centers for specific. They're not going to really, for Canadians, they're not going to change our way of life because.
Well, just real quick, if as a Canadian, if they're building a medical data center, to me, that does change our way of life, because all of a sudden the overstretched and understaffed and overworked medical community in this country can use AI to help better diagnose people in a quicker, more expedient manner. That could save lives.
Agreed. But what I mean, like for you're hearing all these software developers tell stories how, in 36 months, robots are going to come in.
Yeah.
They're going to go on the assembly line. They're going to start to assemble everything. So every manufacturing plant will be a robot. We do not have even close to the grid capacity to do any of this. So when I'm talking about scaling, Jim, I'm talking about the small project, AI center. So when Kevin O'Leary and the guys who are pitching deals on the West Coast of Canada right now, they're talking about very small scaled AI data centers. A lot of money. Now, here's the challenge, for them right now, which you're hearing throughout. Forget the electrical grid, forget the water, forget the environmental issues, forget that electrical companies are super hard to deal with in Canada. And they're slow.
I've dealt with them.
Oh, great. You know what? I have dealt with them on some major projects and getting hydro, because the business I'm in actually does use a lot of energy power.
Yes.
Quite frankly, and it's painful, like painful to the point of 5 years is your horizon on any project.
5 years.
There's no project, quite frankly, substantially in Canada that just to get your grid changed and get your capacity into your site is a 5-year timeline. So that's not, we're not talking just a condo. We're talking, these are big projects. So they're not even close to 5 years in Canada right now. So you take all that aside, the economic feasibility of the subscription. So here's the challenge. Even if you were to get that center that supported medical AI, right? We're in a budget deficit.
We're in a recession. Oh, I can't say that.
Yeah, we're in a technical recession. Yeah, we're in a technical recession. I don't know what a technical recession is, but you think about it. We were already $70 billion in a deficit.
Yeah.
The government. We've done it on previous shows. The government has said in this case, medical is done. They've capped it. Even the province of Ontario that just went on their summer break before they left.
21-week summer break.
21 weeks. Enjoy the boating. And they just said before they went on, no more money into healthcare. So biggest province in Canada basically said done. So there's no province in Canada that's actually looking at putting more money. So as they're about to load into these AI data centers, which quite frankly, you got to think medical is one of the key initiatives.
Absolutely.
It has to be very prescribed because they're not big enough to do anything on a larger scale. That you'd be looking, quite frankly, at getting some money from government. And where's government going to come up with the money? So the subscription model, here's the thing. Take the cost of all these, $71 billion. There has to be a revenue model, subscription model for him to go out there and raise the money on it. So he's saying, I'm going to go to the private market, probably not the public market, right? There could be some people, I guess eventually they will take it public if they can figure out a subscription model after it's built that actually can garner revenue. But quite frankly, if we treat these like public utilities, we don't have the money to do that. So if they get built and we can't use them for anything.
Well, think about this, Paul. You're saying the hospitals are tapped out.
Yeah.
All summer, if you live in Ontario, all you hear about is a charity bake sale, a walkathon, a golf event, a lottery, just trying to scrape up a few extra dollars to keep these hospitals running.
Exactly.
That's all the whole summer. And that's like in every province in Canada. So where would they have the money for a subscription to a hedge fund owned AI medical data center?
Well, you'd have to, so really,
You have to cut something.
you'd have to cut. I was just going to go there. Thank you. So you'd have to go and you'd have to say, okay, you're going to have half the hospitals or half the doctors, half the nurses, half the, listen, as much as, it is a complicated business because medical is tough, but it's not a super complex. You build a medical center, you bring in the staff, you care for the people, and you use the equipment to try to treat them. So it is a fairly process driven, but it's a basic model, right? Complications is research because you're constantly trying to do research to better, subscribe better medicines and better treatments. But for the most part, you would be cutting out people or capital or operating costs in order to accommodate the AI. So what he's saying is, I'm going to spend $70 billion. Now we can, if we're not using medical, we can take this analysis to any other sector, whether it's government, whether it's name a sector, auto,
Financial, like
financial
pension
services,
plan or something?
banks,
Yes.
right? We can do anything. You could take that model and he could say, I'm going to use, I'm going to build an AI data center because the one I'm building out west has to be specific. We don't have enough energy to do anything on a large scale, like an Elon Musk is talking about. So you would be specific, an industry specific data center. So you do that, you take it, you'd have to say, okay, we're going to get rid. I just don't think, honestly, number one, what I think he's probably not thinking about, or they're not thinking about, quite frankly, those environments are highly unionized. So quite frankly, you'd have to go in. So that means people are out. And people aren't going to say, oh, I'm just going to give up my job.
Or they're not replaced when they have attrition. When they let go, they stop replacing them.
They could, but quite frankly, we're already at these crazy pain points with respect to medical of lineups and people and doctors
Absolutely.
and everything else. If you dial down that barometer anymore, I think you'd have a real challenge in Canada, keeping people not getting protesting and really changing governments over even poorer service. So
I'm going to bring up something you've said in previous shows about spending priorities in business and in government. And certain things have to be priority 1, 2, and 3. And the other stuff, you have to either dial back or cut.
right.
Unfortunately, the future, whether we like it or not, China and other countries around the world will start crushing us because they're building these massive AI data centers. So one thing we have a leg up over Europe and other countries is huge expanses of space to build these. We've got the space, whether it's Grand Prairie, Alberta, which is 5 hours northeast of Edmonton, or southern Regina, which I've been through, with huge expanses of empty space to build things like this. And that is the one advantage Canada has. So as much as it's painful, maybe this is where the federal government says has to be a priority for the country's future. And maybe we need to spend less money on this and this in the federal budget and start focusing and help get these built.
Well, so what you're really saying, so this is an interesting thing where I think this leads. The economic model to this inevitably is it's a utility.
Right.
So what I think these AI developers, I'm going to call them, not using any names, but I think what they're really saying is, quite frankly, I want to make this, I want to do this. I want you to subsidize it. I want the public to subsidize it because we need to be afraid of what China's doing.
We can't deny what they're doing.
Well, no. So
yeah, because it is a threat.
So say China's China has been increasing their electrical grid. Out of the whole world, China's been the one country that, quite frankly, has year on year see massive increases in their electrical grid. They put their
Absolutely.
mind to it. The rest of the world's been flat for the most part. Seen moderate growth. We're probably, as Canadians, we do a really good job for what we need as far as producing nuclear and hydroelectric. But the U.S. is terrible at it right now. They've been terrible at it for years. So they're doing a good job. So you think about it, they end up getting chips, they get memory storage, they produce the power, they figure out a way to change 10 industries. Again, they'll never get it to scale to what the software developers are talking about it. They might get driverless cars, they might get medical, they might get robotics in some manufacturing industries. Okay, so they'll have rebalanced their economy, right?
I think what a lot of these developers are talking about is worst case scenario. When you actually listen to them, if it's a lot of if this happens, if this happens, yes, AI as we know it and artificial intelligence and these data centers are going at a rapid pace, but to the point where they're talking about where it's 25% unemployment and all these jobs are gone, we're ways away from that in our society.
So say China gets there first. So let's talk about this. Is an interesting discussion because everyone's like, well, China, that's the argument we're using to get into it. The argument we're using is China's doing it, so we got to do it, right? Okay, so China does it. So we look over and there's a whole bunch of people unemployed in China.
And what did they do?
The Americans say, well, you're not bringing anything here because quite frankly, we don't believe in that model. We have a few AI centers, but quite frankly, we want our people working. Mm-hmm. So we've taken another approach. Canada is a small country. Quite frankly, Mexico, I guarantee Mexico will do AI centers, but not on a big scale. So North America-wise, you'll have kind of mixed bag.
AI data center light compared to China. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So then they're going to be sitting there. Europe is, I don't know, all over the place. I don't know anyone else who's going to do it. So then you'll have a bunch of the Chinese will be sitting there trying to figure out where to sell their products they're building so efficiently at that point. Because people will be like, well, yeah, you did that, but I don't know what you're going to do. So I think their challenge, yeah, great. You can build cars faster. You can use robots. You can get there faster. Are you going to sell it? Because quite frankly, no one's going to take it. If you got there first and you're hopping a competitive advantage and you didn't let me get there, why would I give it to you?
I mean, from a Canadian perspective, we just signed a deal to allow 49,000 of these electric cars.
Yeah.
Who buy? I mean, I think the base model will sell for about 25,000 Canadian, and for a lot of Canadians, that's the only way they could afford an electric car because the other prices are just too expensive. So but when you hear a story this week, Paul, that if you drive that car to the U.S. border, they won't allow you to enter the USA. How does that change things? Because that was brought up today by the American administration that if you drive one of those Chinese-built electric cars to the Peace Bridge or the Gordie Howe Bridge, they're like, you're not going.
You're not coming over.
No,
he's adamant. Well, and that's, again, those are the negotiations that need to take place. That's not a short-term issue.
No.
So that's not happening. So again, using the argument that China is going to be the world leader in this, they're going to hop ahead of us, therefore we need to do time out. Come on. That's not a great argument, quite frankly. I get the argument, and I think there'll always be technologically advanced. There's certain industries like auto that will always be highly in robotics. I get it. There's certain companies that will do better. I think figuring out the world dynamics with respect to AI first. So everyone's got to sit down and say, how are we going to use it? That's going to take a long time, Jim. So
because they haven't had any big serious talks yet, Paul. And I mean, the world leaders talk a good game, but have they actually brought in the experts in their respective countries and said, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. Let's focus on the good, try to avoid the bad, and stay away from the ugly. Because, and this is part of the problem. If you went to Canadians and said, we're going to build these AI data centers in these parts of the country with a focus on healthcare and this, like, stuff that we need, I think most Canadians go, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes us a bet that helps the nation.
It's not going to put me out of work. It's going to make me live longer. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Which is where we're at, really. Like, and again, all these podcasts where these people get on and they talk about you know, there's going to be all these robots and we're going to sit at home and they're going to do everything for us. And listen, you know, if you listen to all this, you're really going down it's great.
It's good content.
It's great content. It's enlightening. For some people, it's interesting. For me, it's the business model's not there. It's a bunch of hogwash. You know, then you go on and you listen to Elon Musk and the podcast he does. Listen, I get it. You know, the fact that he wants to go into space, he wants to create solar fields in space. He wants to do, you know, more flights to space than we currently have planes leaving airports.
You see the Jeff Bezos rocket the other day testing that didn't go so well.
Well, they're all interesting ideas.
Yeah.
But even he said, so this is interesting. And when you really look behind the wall of what he's talking about, even he says, listen, to do this at scale, because quite frankly, doing small data centers using electricity and water and challenges and centers across the nation is fine. But to do this at scale and make it big enough, you basically it could never be done on Earth. So in other words, you'd have to create data center power electrical plants the size of Nevada.
And already, I mean, you think about some of the CANDU reactors we have in Pickering and other parts of Ontario. We have some of the world's biggest nuclear reactors. So you're saying you'd have to build one 2 or 3 times the size, and the only sole focus is to power the data center.
Exactly. So, you know, the United States right now has 4,200 terawatt hours of electricity, right? We have 625 terawatt hours of electricity.
Which is pretty good when you consider we have 1/10 of the population.
We've done amazing.
And we're going to get better because they're building small modular reactors across parts of the country now in the next few years.
And we have a large landmass. So we do have, we've done an amazing job. Quite frankly, we do have specialty areas I believe we can go. I do believe that if we specialize in certain areas like medical and other areas, we can do really well at this. But you know, to sit there and say that I'm, you know, and my kids should be worried that we're going to be out of jobs, you know, and that they're going to be sitting at home where we started the show.
Okay, well, I'll bring a scenario, Paul.
Maybe our kids.
I remember being in high school in the early 1980s when everyone said, well, computers are going to take our job.
Yeah.
Right? And then it was, the internet's coming, the internet's going to take your job. That was the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. So every 10, 15 years, there's been a new introduction of a technology, a new thing that wasn't around before, that this is going to take your job. And the people still work, you know, because there's so many things that actually need human beings still.
Yeah.
Like I tend to agree with you. To get to the point where the robots and the AI can do the work that all these human beings do, how much power, would we have to create? How much brain power would we have to? That may happen someday.
Yeah.
Is it 50 years? Is it 100 years? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Listen, is AI going to be smarter than humans? Yeah, sure it is. So in the lab, I think it all gets proven out, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know, it'll happen. You know, their math skills, their English skills, their language skills will be much more superior to the average human being, or even the smartest human being. But quite frankly, what do you do with that at some point? And given the ability or inabilities to get the resources, to build the power, to build the plants, we're just not equipped to do it at this point. So no matter what we build, whether how much we can develop robotics, we're not going to get there. And this is a 50 to 100 year program, quite frankly, that maybe at the end of that, but in our lifetime, no.
So, but imagine
in our kids' lifetime, probably not.
The Canadian pension plan. And so many Canadians rely on that money every month. Imagine they had an AI data center dedicated to the Canadian pension plan to make the right financial decisions and right investments. And all of a sudden, instead of 5 or 6% return, it's 15 or 20%, and more money is going to the pension plan, meaning more and more Canadians have a financial safety net when they retire. Right. But to me, I think most Canadians would sign up for that.
Oh, sure. Well, and some of that already exists. Quite frankly, you know, they do have programs that actually are built for this. Right?
Okay.
So they're hopped ahead. the challenge is a lot of investment today is milliseconds, right? So it's actually everyone trying to gain a millisecond on another millisecond. And so that is the, you know, the interesting part of all the trading dynamics that go on in the world. But think about it, Jim. If we can't even tool up our electrical grid in a decade, so consuming, we can't even get to the point where we're even at a basic level of power requirements to do specific AI. So that'll take us a decade. How long is it going to take us to build something substantially to start to replace human beings? Like it's, you know, that's where I think, quite frankly, and, you know, we hear about self-driving cars and all these things, very specific purposes, you know, the way they do them, which is very interesting. If you watch kind of the way they power those cars, they actually tap into the grid in off hours, and then they store the energy and reuse it throughout the day.
Okay, that's cool.
So, but to do that, you need battery requirements. So again, the cost, the space, the technology, the battery replacement, the battery disposal, the waste, the sewage, the water requirements. To, you know, again, once you get into battery technology and harnessing that and cooling it, there's so many other issues you got to deal with. Therefore, you know, when I mentioned earlier, let's go down into Nevada and start to build AI centers. Well, it's too hot. So quite frank, climate is not great. Our climate, probably better suited.
Here's another challenge, Paul. China, they'll build 30 coal-fired electrical plants that they don't care. In Canada, it's quite obvious everything's got to be carbon-free.
Yes.
It's got to be hydroelectric from a waterfall or a nuclear power plant or wind or solar. There's no way ever in Canada would they ever say yes to a coal-fired power plant, and they're building them by the dozens in China to power so much of their stuff. That's one advantage and one difference between the two societies and the two mindsets.
Yeah, so here we are trying to be carbon-free and change the world, and they're building coal plants, which, again, we've talked, you know, that is one of the big complaints, you know, that people have had about, you know, switching over to electric cars. Look at that, you know, interesting, you know, to watch. You know, the fact that we're having this discussion, how long have we been talking about electric cars?
Well, it's 20 years.
20 years. How successful are we right now?
I'd say we're not as successful as the experts thought we would be 20 years ago. But if I think in the last 5 years, it's in my neighborhood, in my life, in my travels, I see more electric and more hybrid cars than ever before. And that's the big thing, is the hybrid gas-powered electric. So, because they make a distinctive sound when you engage the transmission and they start driving. So I'd say over half the vehicles in my travels now are either hybrid or electric.
Yeah. I'm driving a hybrid right now. So,
I have a hybrid as well.
Yeah. So we didn't get there fully, right?
No.
We partially got there. So my guess is, you know, we're going to aim for the stars or space. And what we're going to do is we're going to be happy to get, you know, to the moon. But wherever we end up here, we're going to end up somewhere in the middle. I'm hoping it'll be a benefit. Any more conversation, you know, these conversations about AI taking jobs and AI doing this and AI doing that, I think we got to start to temper a little, because what we're doing is we're demotivating. We started the show off talking about young people graduating and their loans and everything. What we're starting to do a little bit is we're demotivating a group of people that I think we have to be careful.
Absolutely. That is the last thing society we ever want to do.
Exactly. And we're just giving cannon fodder for them not to be productive. So
how about this? How about we tell those young people who sacrifice so much to get the degree, instead of saying you're going to lose your job, we are going to give you a job where you use AI to make the world a better place. Wouldn't that motivate them better?
Yeah. So basically you can get into medical AI rehab. You can do this. You can transition that.
AI for infrastructure, AI for clean water, AI for like stuff that we need.
Well, and, you know, chip development, even chip development. You look at, you know, Samsung is doing a ton of development on chips right now. really to get to a capacity where we have an overabundance of chips is going to take 5 years to a decade. So we're still so far behind on that. We don't even talk about memory. So quite frankly, we talk a lot about chips. We talk a lot about electricity. We talk a lot about water. We're not talking about memory storage. So there's another issue that we haven't even captured.
Good point.
Again, you start, we talk about robots replacing us, but we don't talk about anything with the nuances. And to me, it's because a lot of the people we're actually hearing from now are software developers who are really happy that this is taking off. This is a great business for them. Quite frankly, they can get jobs where they go and they build AI matrices and programs, and they get into it. And it potentially will be a great 5 years for them. But quite frankly, when you get into, this is where software meets hardware. So this is kind of the guy who designs the building and the guy who actually goes and pours the concrete and puts the steel in realizes that the guy who designed the building never built a building.
Right. The HVAC won't work, and the plumbing's a bit of a mess, and the parking garage is going to crumble, and now I got to fix it.
Exactly. And this is where we're at on this, right? Yeah. There's a bunch of philosophical people saying, okay, I'm going to sit down and come up with all these, Star Trek ideas that are going to be great. I'm going to go to the moon so many times a year. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to take solar panels. Like, think about it. You can go into space. Great. You can create your robots in space. So you can create your solar panels, your energy. You got to then figure out a way to get your energy back to Earth.
They've not figured that out yet.
No. So what are you going to do? Produce it and then
do what?
Logistically truck it back to Earth? Like, you know what I mean? Like, think about it. It is crazy, these conversations, but we're having them. And people are like, they're going to do a fund for this and I'm going to participate in it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you are.
I can think of other funds I would invest in first.
Yeah, I can think of other funds, but again, I'm not. When I talk about AI, what I'm trying to say is I like the concept. I'm not against AI. I'm for the development. I think we have to be cautious. Already. So this is an interesting. Remember Aaron Brockovich?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Academy Award-winning movie. Julia Roberts, great movie. True story.
True story. I'm getting ready for the show, and the story was about. What was it? Cancer, and it was about.
It was the toxic water.
Yeah, toxic water caused by. It's going to come to me.
DuPont.
Nick, is it? Who's the Aaron Brockovich company? You look it up.
I thought it was DuPont.
Is it? No, I don't know if it was DuPont.
I'll look it up.
If you could look it up, that'd be great. But she's already on the case. She already has a website. She's already trying to think. So if you live, let's take
the Pacific Gas and Electric Company.
Yeah.
And it infected the groundwater and contaminated it.
Right. Okay. I was thinking it was something else. But, she's already on the case. She's already got a website. She's already talking about the impacts of people. So already the legal beagles are already on the trail of this saying, okay, if they're going to build an AI center by you, number one, your home values, your health, you can already see the cases and slowing down and where do you build it? How do you do it? Nuclear centers still have that, nuclear power is great, but quite frankly, there's all kinds of settlements go on all year long for people who show up and say, I took my pills because I live 10 kilometers from that nuclear plant. I took them like you asked me to. The ones they send them, the ones they send people in the mail just to say, take this because your
just in case
radiation might be higher than other people. And then they show up and say, I got cancer at 50. Right. But they still have settlements going on for, those power plants.
But having said all that, there are still communities in North America who are welcoming this with open arms. There was a story recently where Mark Zuckerberg and Meta went to a porous area of northeast Louisiana to set up an AI data center with a crumbling town. You see it with the board, and they're like, on bended knee, what do you need? Because they're like, we need jobs to build it, and we need people to run it, and it's going to save the community.
Oh, yeah.
And now at the same time, North Bay, they tried to build one in North Bay, Ontario, and they got so much pushback from the locals. They're like, they had to tap out and kill the project. So some communities will hold their nose and say yes to it because they're so desperate, but others won't. But I can see there's the Aaron Brockovich side, not in my life, no way. And then there's the mayor of these towns in poor areas of the North America, like, please bring it.
Tesla got some pushback in Tennessee and jumped the border to Memphis. They jumped the border over into. Sorry, I got that wrong. But
because Memphis is Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly.
They went to Mississippi?
They went to Mississippi. So right. So they actually got some, and they went over to Mississippi. Sorry, but it's interesting to see how they're jumping to find, which industries do that, right?
Right.
Whether it's any industry that has challenges. Gaming did it.
Exactly.
Gaming did it for years. They would go town to town until someone said, please build a casino here. And the next thing you know, boom, they were in, right?
Because you could drive in rural parts of North America, Canada, the U.S., you're like, oh, like on the 401 outside of Belleville, there's one in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's a casino there. You drive by it, and it happens all the time.
Yeah. They were willing to accept it in, and they let them come in. And quite frankly, this is the same thing. They're going to go from place to place till they find a place to put them.
Without the opposition.
And we'll get built. But at the end of the day, they're not going to get built to the extreme ends that we're hearing about.
So when we have these G20 summits that we see in the news, in the CBC and BBC and whatnot, Paul, and they're talking about all this stuff, I think on the agenda, AI data centers and the future AI has to be one of the top things because it's happening. Right. You can't deny it. So while you're talking about the economy and the war in Iran, let's talk about this. What are we doing? What's our strategy? What do we want to avoid? Have you seen anything like that? A group thing from all these countries? That's a conversation that has to be had.
Yeah. Well, if it is, so here's the interesting thing. If it's not had, does it ever grow as an industry? That's what, there might be someone take off on it, but then the world is becoming isolation. It's an isolationist theory or isolationist strategy happening now.
Yeah.
So, we talk on shows about the Western Hemisphere versus the rest of the world. We talk about, quite frankly, military and development in certain, and if, Iran goes a different way. So all these geopolitical issues will tie into what's going to happen on the AI front.
Absolutely.
So as they're hopefully, those get resolved and calmed down. And when those are calmed and the world is a little nicer place, right? Then right now, then it's time to sit down and say, okay, where does AI fit? Because if one leaps ahead and, for example, China, does it go back to a geopolitical mess again? Do we actually stop trade? Do we stop interaction? What happens?
Well, think about last week. There was a Chinese high-ranking official in Ottawa, Mark Carney, and they were not allowed any questions. The press were thrown in there, and they had 60 seconds to set up and take a quick video or photo, and then thrown out immediately. So we're not even, reporters aren't even allowed to ask them questions. Maybe they wanted to ask the guy a question about AI and coal-fired hydro plants and whatnot, but that was forbidden. And Carney said, no. He didn't want to offend them. So right now, Carney and the Liberal government, and a lot of governments, are so in bed with China when it comes to business, they really will do anything to avoid offending them.
Oh, yeah, of course. But the geopolitical issues, it's fine for us to sort of in isolation go off and talk to different people and do trade deals and everything else. As the geopolitical issues get resolved and, the current wars going on get resolved, where that shakes out, I think we're very naive to think that's not going to impact those negotiations. So as we go through it, and therefore, I think we're very naive to actually think that AI right now is, other than on an isolated basis, is a truly viable business. I think it could be. I think you got to let those things play out first. Once those things play out, then I think your point, Jim, about an active discussion of how AI plays on the world format, how it impacts, other than military, I think is a discussion that each country has to have.
But right now, the one thing that is happening, and you just brought it up, militaries of the world are using AI. Planning for logistics, picking targets. They're using AI to help their decision making. And they're looking at patterns of movement and where the enemy is and where they're not, and using that to not waste time and resources and potential lives when they attack someone. I mean, we'd be naive to think that AI hasn't been a huge help to Ukraine in their battle against Russia and is being used all the time between the USA and Iran.
But then then the interesting part, it becomes a world of whose AI is better than.
Yeah.
So now you're creating a sub-industry within the military machine of AI for military that actually is trying to build AI that's better than another country's AI.
Because we can't let them get better.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a never-ending battle where you never really know. It's the nuclear conundrum, right? You know,
it is.
Do they have nuclear weapons? Do they have nuclear weapons? Do they have better AI? Who has the best AI? Oh, they have great AI. I know they can do that, but I don't really know. But so then, quite frankly, all we're doing, and that's to your civil conversation after the geopolitics is taken out of it, is to sit around the table and say, listen, are we going to be talking about at some point nuclear is going to, you know, we'll talk less about nuclear and talk about, quite frankly, how we actually reach AI compacts?
And maybe potential AI restrictions.
Yeah.
You can only build so much and do so much with it. And like we have with restrictions on certain weapons in the world, we'll have AI restrictions.
Right. So then we're going to be having potentially AI wars because someone broke the restriction.
Right.
Right. At some point, we have to kind of go time out, right? You know, how does this get us in any better place?
Yeah, maybe I'm cynical. I don't have faith in politicians always making the right decision, having the right conversation. So I would hope that, because I don't think a lot of these conflicts will be resolved soon. These are conversations these world leaders have to have sooner rather than later. And all the big speeches and all the big, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, great. But let's just roll up the sleeves and sit down and like, hey, let's talk about AI. How does it affect your country? What's good? What's bad? We need to have those big discussions with how it affects the world, because it's affecting everyday people all the time, and it's just going to get more and more through time.
I agree, Jim.
Yeah, that's why we don't need AI. He's AI.
Looking for reliable and convenient personal safety products? Less Lethal has you covered. As Canada's only authorized Byrna distributor, we provide a range of products for recreation, protection, and security. Explore our Byrna launcher lineup, including the LE, SD, TCR, and Mission 4, designed for different levels of performance and protection needs. We also offer the Banshee personal safety alarm, designed to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals. Because your safety is our top priority. Shop now at lesslethal.ca.